communication, including 5G and beyond, will change the face of healthcare in the near future. A hospital information system with seamless handshaking of medical establishment across the three services is an absolute imperative in the continuity of care of our patients in the services, and this needs to be integrated with telemedicine solutions that are rapidly being put in place across the country. The future is indeed exciting, but we need to board the bus at the right time to break out our silos and to stay relevant. And we have a very illustrious speaker in Surgeon Vice Admiral Rajat Datta, who is the DGMS Navy. Surgeon Vice Admiral Rajat Datta, AVSM, SMVSM, is an alumnus of the prestigious Armed Forces Medical College, from where he graduated in 1982. He went on to do his DM in cardiology from Pune University in 1998. He is also a fellow of the Society of Interventional Cardiology from the USA. May I now request Rajat to please start the proceedings.
Good afternoon, everyone. The topic which has been given to me today is the challenges for the future. That is the title and the subject for this session number 4. And I am expected to give a keynote address for this. Hello.
You're fine, sir. We're listening to you.
Okay. Because I lost the feedback. Healthcare is a topic which has always presented multitude challenges for the healthcare leaders the world over. Availability of quality healthcare is one of the most important factors as to how individuals perceive their quality of life, and in most nations, along with the economy, this is one of the major issues that engages the attention of the political leadership. Military healthcare is even more challenging as it demands quality care to be delivered in extremely challenging circumstances on varied terrain on land, in the air, and both on the surface and beneath it. In the Indian context, much has been debated about how best can we implement affordable healthcare coverage for millions of our countrymen, but it has really never taken center stage in the political arena. It always appears that for a country of our size, we are hard-pressed to find solutions to complex issues which impact the ability to successfully implement cost-effective programs, maintain efficient operations and services, staff and train employees, and support other healthcare initiatives. In the military context, the future of organizational sustainment in healthcare requires skilled leadership, as it is present today on this August forum, to plan for any potential problems. In the years ahead, the AFMS is expected to encounter a plethora of challenges, including scientific and technological advancements, regulatory and policy changes, funding, education, and ethical issues as well. We must realize that a combination of these challenges could quickly consume both time and money for facility upkeep, equipment upgrade, and operational training. It is a well-known fact that the technological advancements present additional challenges with programming, control, and support issues. I will now try to highlight a few important challenges that we face as military healthcare providers in the years to come. It will also be my endeavor to try and provide a few solutions and leave some to be provided by the speakers who follow. One of the main challenges that we are going to face is that of rising costs for providing good healthcare. As the strategic outreach of our armed forces increases and as the nation aspires to be a regional power, our healthcare concerns will also increase, and so will the attendant costs. Research reveals that the required spending on healthcare almost invariably grows faster than the growth of the GDP. In the backdrop of limited financial resources, we'll have to, in my mind, focus on 4 crucial aspects to combat the rising costs of care. Strive to have energy-efficient hospital projects that are built in a time-bound manner, ensure robust and reliable modes of procurement of equipment and medicines, practice cost-effective methods of treatment, and harness the full potential of a workforce. These 4 issues, which have plagued us for long, have enormous cost implications and can by themselves be the topic of various webinars. There is a challenge of technological advancement. The practice of medicine and technology has increasingly become so intertwined that while it has created many opportunities, it has also spawned unique challenges. Today's health organizations are facing shortages of trained manpower and need low-cost alternatives to hospital visits and inpatient care. 5 to 10 years from now, we can expect more of a shift from the traditional visit to the clinic and screening to virtual and cyber doctor-patient interactions. As we speak today, the shadow of the COVID pandemic hangs menacingly over us, and some would argue that telemedicine would be the solution to all the healthcare problems. Telemedicine does work well for treating common conditions such as colds and sprains and can more easily manage patient care for chronic illnesses that require limited interventions. But how it'll really be able to deliver cutting edge cardiac care, for example, or complex surgical solutions still begs an answer. We'll also need to acquire and develop methods for maintaining and accessing private sessions and data of patients. Then there are training challenges. Professional development of healthcare personnel at all levels is the key to sustained organizational effectiveness. We as healthcare leaders must take the necessary steps to both develop and assess key personal and professional skills to ensure that our workforce remains proficient. Most of our training initiatives remain centered around the traditional clinical interview with its focus on acute illness, but we have to challenge that dynamic and change it to include mandatory skill sets on combat care to remain operationally and militarily relevant. The requirement to use to the fullest online methods of training will become paramount if we are to stay relevant in an increasingly networked world. The technological infrastructure required for such training will have to be planned at all locations to ensure easy accessibility right down to the last medical assistant on board a ship or a nursing officer in a peripheral hospital. In addition, changing skill sets will require skilling, upskilling, and reskilling, all of which will add to the cost of training. Ethical and regulatory challenges. It may seem to some that ethical and regulatory challenges are seldom encountered in the domain of military healthcare, but that is far from the truth. We would therefore be severely mistaken if we choose to ignore the real challenges these pose and the enormous damage that these can cause to an organization that has painstakingly built up its reputation over the years. Incidents of ethical impropriety in healthcare settings and breach of regulatory provisions, apart from hurting the sentiments of our patients, also severely erode the trust that military commanders place on their medical personnel. Given the very serious ramifications, healthcare leaders must ensure that the conduct of all healthcare workers is above reproach at all times by continuous education, effective communication, and active monitoring. To summarize, healthcare leaders at all levels must be able to provide direction, guidance to their organization, and set the pace about roles, responsibility, and functions. We will have to necessarily devise and revise strategies that everyone can understand and follow. All actions taken by healthcare workers must not only focus on ensuring that the patient receives the most appropriate, timely, and effective services possible, but must also simultaneously address the achievement of desired organizational goals. We must strive to build a collaborative environment whereby everyone is involved in the process of developing strategies to help overcome the challenges as they arise. Staying abreast of the changes and implementing a plan of action will create success for the FMS in the years to follow. I would like to end with an exhortation or a call to action to all present here today that with so many changes on the horizon, we must ensure that we are ready to be positively impacted by them and not be caught unawares. Our organization must continue to engage in indigenous research and develop protocols to create the best patient care delivery systems that meet the need of both staff and patients. No one approach works best always, and we must continuously explore models and methodologies to help tackle challenges as they arise in the battlefield or in the hospital of the future. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am General Bhatnagar, and I will be speaking on challenges and avenues in medical research, health, and training like medical education in the coming times. And at the outset, I'd like to thank General Bhatia, General Arora, who were very kind enough to invite me for this webinar. And thank you so much. Well, the unique deployment of armed forces in various terrains, right from deserts, mountains, forests, right up to the extreme high altitude, is itself a challenge to keep them operationally active and medically fit and healthy to carry out their tasks in various terrains and under various challenging conditions. So over the years, a large number of studies have been carried out, and some of the organizations which have been involved in this are the AFMRC, that is the Armed Forces Medical Research Committee, and then we have a high altitude medical research center. Then a lot of these studies are done in collaboration with the DRDO and other reputed government research institutions like the ICMR. The medical research itself needs to be focused and need-driven with clearly identified research questions and deliverables. And for this to happen, the formal inputs from the commanders in the field is desirable as to what are their requirements. Then the health and well-being of troops under any terrain, especially the high altitude, is itself of paramount importance, because in high altitude, the main morbidity and many times the mortality is due to the terrain, the weather, and unique climatic conditions the men have to face there. And also the medical personnel posted locally in units and military hospitals should be involved in these research projects, so because they are the actual point of contact with the men, and their involvement throughout the project makes it easier to carry on the project and to get the right deliverables. Now, some of the major research themes currently ongoing, and of course they have been researched in the past, are as shown. That is, the high altitude pulmonary edema is a very common problem. It does happen to a lot of tourists and of course to the men. Then the study of the cardiorespiratory system at high altitude itself is a major topic, because there are a lot of body changes and bodily adjustments going on when a man from the plains is exposed to the high altitude terrain. Then thirdly, the acclimatization and the acute mountain sickness itself, these are very common problems, and acclimatization schedules have been addressed in some studies, and further studies are planned in this. Then the cold adaptation, the cold injuries are faced by a lot of troops deployed in extreme cold climate conditions and high mountains. And these have also been studied right from the physiology to their common morbidity and common diseases reported by these men. Another topic has been the study of the native highlanders, like the Ladakhis or the Ladakh Scouts, and their physiology and how they adapt to their unique climate and to their unique terrain. That itself is a good study going on. And then another important topic has been hematology studies involving the coagulation studies, thrombosis studies, and also the immunity of the men at that in different conditions in the armed forces. One of the studies which is coming up is oxygen enrichment of the shelters of the environment at high altitude. And the advantage of this is that if we increase the percentage of oxygen in the ambient air to 24 to 27%, then it can lead to a lot of beneficial effects, and this can work up to 5,000 meters. It will lead to a better quality of sleep. It will improve the cognitive function of the person. It gives a general sense of well-being following these two prior to benefits. And it has also been found to be useful for short sojourns, like pilots flying in and out of high altitude areas. And then there are they may also act as treatment facilities for high altitude illness while the patient is awaiting evacuation to a hospital or evacuation out of the high altitude area. Some of the concerns expressed with this oxygen enrichment at high altitude has been interference with natural acclimatization process. However, since this will be carried out only during sleeping hours, remaining time if a person spends in the normal climate, the process should not interfere with the acclimatization already he has undergone. Second concern has been that of fire hazard, and therefore certain precautions will be required, like no smoking and being careful about inflammable liquids and gases in these shelters. And lastly has been the cost and maintenance of such shelters, and these will have to be built into the budget of the armed forces. Then another important study has been the operational preparedness in extreme environments. There are various studies under this head. One has been like reduction of the high altitude acclimatization period. There have been a few studies recently, and further studies are planned to our conventional schedule of acclimatization at various stage 1 to 2 to 3 stages and extreme high altitude, whether that can be modified for the benefit of our troops with or without medicines. Then there have been certain studies on devices for early detection of high altitude illnesses and maladies, like the salivary nitrous oxide detection and the hydrogen sulfide detection. These are still ongoing and yet to come into clinical practice. And thirdly, there has been an interest in intermittent hypoxia exposure to troops at ground level, say for a period of few days and few hours every day, and thereafter taking them to high altitude, and this thereby reducing their acclimatization period in the high altitude. So basically mimicking the environment of the high altitude at ground level, so that the body starts adapting right from the ground level itself, and they take less time to adapt to higher altitude. So this is also an important area of research and ongoing. Then coming to collaboration with the ICMR, which is the national body in New Delhi, we've been collaborating in various topics like in epidemics and national calamities, one of them which is ongoing. Then we have set up Armed Forces Infectious Disease Research and Diagnostic Lab Network with their help. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, present pandemic, we have collaborated in establishing various testing labs by providing them kits and by providing them the machines to carry out the RT-PCR and the antibody tests also. Second point we have been collaborating with the ICMR is the making available the convalescent plasma therapy for COVID-19 patients in our hospitals, and that is now started and it's ongoing in our centers. Initially, the OKO had to be taken from ICMR. Now it is widely available. And lastly, we have a solidarity drug trial again for the coronavirus treatment, and this is started in one of our centers, and we'll await the results down the line after a few months. This is the COVID-19 as shown as 0.1 micrometer in diameter, and there are various other things, including the RBCs, which you can see the size of this virus as compared to other small other particles. Now, the background of COVID-19 is well known. This is a bit I'm talking about how the health department and how the health infrastructure of the armed forces responds to a challenge, a worldwide challenge like this. And as we all know, it was isolated on 7th January. Then on 22nd January, this human-to-human transmission was declared. And by 11th March, it was declared as a pandemic by WHO. Though nearly about a month and a half earlier, in Jan, they declared it as a public health emergency of international concern. And it took time for it to be declared as a pandemic. Now, initial response of the armed forces had been that we had issued out the SOPs and the guidelines on quarantines and other issues right in the beginning. And the first 215 evacuated from Wuhan were quarantined in the first quarantine set up by the armed forces in Manchester. And thereafter, many other centers were opened by Army, Air Force, and Navy. And since 2017 to date, more than 3,000 Indians from various countries like Japan, Middle East, and Italy, they have been evacuated. Have been quarantined.
Before that, before I hand over to General Bhatia, I have a announcement for all delegates before I say anything else, and I'm putting on the poll which we want to do because this is the first time we have started with this series of webinars, and it's also been a month or two for these people from whom we have hired the platform to use this. So we want to take a full survey of the participants about the suitability of this arrangement. So, Rashmi, can I hand over to you?
All the delegates can see the poll questions in the right hand side of their screens. Under polls, you will find 4 questions over there. So please participate in the polls.
Just click on each question and you will find the options to answer. Click on each poll question. Thank you. I think on behalf of CENJOS and Indian Military Review, I would like to thank the chairman, General Narayanan, and General Datta for the keynote address, and General Bhatnagar for his excellent talk. I would also like to thank the Director General Armed Forces Medical Services for his consent and for his support to organize this, and for all the Director Generals of the Army, Navy, Air Force to have agreed to come and address the delegates, all the sponsors and exhibitors without whom this event would not have been possible. I would also like to thank 10 Times for having given us this platform. And they have a lot of more to do. They will give us a recording. We will make the recording available to the DGAFMS. We will also have it available on YouTube by various sessions. The Center for Joint Warfare Studies is going to send its recommendations to Headquarters IDS and also share with you. Can I request all the participants over the next 3 days, the exhibitors' details, documents, downloads, videos, presentations will all be available in the handouts. Their booths will also be open to look at what they have to offer. Would like to visit again at any time. It's open 24 hours. Of course, from the exhibitor's side, somebody may be present during working hours, but otherwise it's open all the time. With that, I thank you all, including the participants who took time off to attend, and hopefully we will organize another one more focused and as per the wishes of the Director General Armed Forces Medical Services.